Good evening everyone and welcome to Wednesday Night Live. I am very excited to be coming to you for yet another Wednesday Night Live. Really love this part of my week. I look forward to logging on and saying hello to everyone and all that sort of stuff. So it's really cool to be here for another Wednesday, and I'm looking forward to tonight's topic. As I always say, please by all means send in any topics or anything that you'd like to hear me talk about on Wednesday Night Live. The show doesn't happen unless I've got something to talk about, and I want to be definitely talking about things that you guys want to hear about, and so please send me topics and anything that you would like to hear me talk about. So tonight I'm Tanja from Tanja Kraus Horsemanship, for those of you who don't know me, and tonight I'm talking about 5 ways that riders self-sabotage or delay their progress. I'm going to talk about these things because these are probably, there's lots of different ways that I see this happen, and we'd certainly be here all night if I tried to talk about all of them. So what I'm going to try and do tonight is just share the top 5 reasons that I see, and the top 5 ways that I see riders really sabotaging themselves, not knowing that they're doing it, and it having an effect on their progress with their horses. And I hope that you guys get some maybe some insight or some tips or something like that out of tonight's show that will help you go through those areas and fix them or address them or whatever you want to call it, and start making progress with your horses. So the first thing that I see people doing and that causes a delay in progress is, it's going to sound pretty funny because it is getting task focused. So what I mean by that is, I see so many people that are trying to train for a specific thing, which most of us are doing most of the time that we're with our horses, where whether you're building foundation work, like we just did a 2-week colt start. Obviously the whole point of that colt start was to get those horses ridden safely and the riders on safely and happy to go home with those horses riding and go on with. So we're always task focused in a way that we consider the big picture. You don't need to be a competition rider to be task focused, but obviously with competition riding, there's particular maneuvers that you might need to train and things like that. So getting task focused is something that's really, really easy in the horse world. And it's something that I do recommend in terms of having things to do and things to look forward to, and a bit of a path or a plan or goals to look forward to with your horse, because I feel like knowing what we want to do with our horses allows us to make progress and go towards that. Otherwise, we'd just be going around in circles all the time, not knowing what it is that we want. So, but what I'm going to talk about tonight is the way that getting task focused can actually slow you down. And what I mean by that is, when I see people getting specifically focused on achieving a goal or a maneuver or something like that, and they don't take into consideration the benefit of all the training that they're doing in order to get to that goal. So let's take the colt starting as an example, and let's say that everyone was task focused on riding their horses and getting all their colts mounted and ridden by the end of 2 weeks, which is very, very true. And to have that goal in mind was very important. But if the people had become so task focused that they were not really investing time in all the skills that we did in the build up to mounting those horses, they possibly would have compromised their own safety, and they certainly would have compromised their horses' confidence and ability to progress through the system. So what I mean by that is, if they were out there and they were going, I don't know why I'm teaching my horse to go on a lunge, I just want to hurry up and get on. Or I don't understand why we're teaching the horse to be tied up safely. I just want to get on the horse. If you're thinking in that way and your focus is just that end result, I just want to ride the horse, or I just want to get him on the float, or I just want to, or the trailer for the Americans watching, I just want to do X, Y, Z. What happens is you start to consider all of the work that you're doing in terms of foundation work as something to get past and something to hurry up and get on with, and something that you just want to tick that box and say, yep, I've done that. Now let's get to the real job of getting the horse on the trailer. Now let's get to the real job of mounting the horse. So going back to the colt start again, what everyone did at the colt start, we did a lot of work in terms of building a citizen. So teaching the horses to be tied up, teaching the horses to, pick up their feet, teaching the horses to stand and be shampooed and groomed, and teaching the horses to lead. And then we had ground exercises that we were doing in terms of hindquarter yields or forequarter yields, or turn on the haunches, or circles, or going sideways, and all this sort of stuff. So if the people had just been doing those tasks in order to get on the horse, what they would have lost was the benefit of all that platform work that we've been doing, and all that groundwork and all that foundation work that we've been doing, that made their horses confident and happy and as safe as you can be on an unridden horse, safe for their first ride. So I'm pleased to report that everyone had fantastic first and subsequent rides, and by the end of the 2 weeks, all of the horses were happily going out on a small trail through the bush and through water and things like that. And all the horses were also on the final day able to stand in a clinic situation and line up side by side, 5 horses in an arena together that had never, 2 weeks previously had never had a rider on their back, and they're happily going out on the trail with multiple horses. They're happily going into a clinic situation where they had to stand still and wait for me to talk, and then be presented with a bit of information that their rider was trying to teach them, or maybe they were, trying to refine a lateral bend or a hindquarter yield or something like that. So what happened was that all of the foundation work and all of the time that we spent teaching our horse to, tie up, or pick up his feet, was directly related to how well the horses went when they went out on the trail, or when they were in the arena, or whatever it was. So all of that platform, or that foundation work that we were doing, made it so that the horses had confidence, and they were able to translate the trust that they had developed on the ground with their person to on the back, and then happily and safely go out on the trail. So if the people had just been task focused and going, I don't care about this stuff, I just want to get on the horse, once you get up there, what are you going to do now? You can't, or you can build trust from on the back, but you're potentially compromising your and your horse's safety in trying to do so. Whereas the way that we did it, by not getting task focused and investing a lot of time in the lead up tasks, and understanding that they were beneficial for now, not only our immediate focus, which was riding, but for all of our stuff in the future, all of those horses are going to be exceptional lifelong partners for those people. So not getting task focused, or getting task focused, is something that I really see that can delay progress for a lot of people, because they have that one, that lineal thinking. They've got that one track mind, and they don't realize that teaching a horse, let's use trailer loading as an example, because it can be really frustrating, and you're trying to get your horse on the trailer, and you've got somewhere to be, and all that sort of stuff. What generally happens there is that we don't consider that all the time that we spend teaching the horse to line up, and teaching the horse to come forward off pressure, and teaching the horse to drive onto the trailer, or whatever it is, all of that is training in the bank. So instead of saying, oh, it took me half an hour to teach my horse to trailer load, or an hour, or 3 hours, or 5 hours, or whatever it was, instead of saying, oh, I wasted that time, you go, that was 5 hours invested into my horse, and now that training's in there. I've got that training in the bank, and now next time I need to ask my horse to do something, that training's already going to be in there, and that's to my benefit. So number one, don't get task focused. Obviously have a plan, obviously have some goals and things like that you want to go forward to. I do courses on goal setting. I'm not saying not to do goal setting or not to have a plan or a focus, but don't get wrapped up in that final focus point. The second thing that I see happening with riders and their horses and sabotaging riders and their horses, and I'm just going to say to everyone, I can see that people are saying hello, so hello, thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. I can't actually see from this distance the names and what you've actually written. So again, at the end of the show, I will log on to my Facebook and read all the comments and reply to you then. So thank you, I really appreciate it. I'm not saying hello for for a reason other than that I can't see your names and things like that. So I appreciate you tuning in. Not focusing on relaxation is probably, if I had to tell, if someone interviewed me and said, what's your number one tip for everyone from foundation horses to Olympic dressage horses, what's the number one thing that you can focus on that is going to give you a significant benefit to any horse anywhere in the world doing any discipline? My answer would be focus on the relaxation. If you can focus on the relaxation of that horse and the confidence in that horse, you will see his body improve, you will see his mind improve, you will be more confident, he and you will both enjoy your work. I showed some photos and I am going to write an article about it when I have the chance. I did a colt start for a lady probably a couple of years ago now, and I was living on a property that had tank water, and so I was unable to wash the horse or anything too much while she was with me. And the owner washed the horse before she sent her to me and took in the wash bay, so the horse was standing on concrete, a rear photo, like a back photo from behind the horse, and a side profile photo the day that the horse left to come to me. And then on her return, which was only 21 days later, she took the same two photos again after she'd washed the horse and sent them to me and said, look at the incredible change in this horse's body from only 3 weeks, and look at the areas in which this horse has developed muscle, which was in all the areas that we want the horse to develop muscle. She had, she had built muscle over the top line, her back had developed, she had smoothed out and developed nice rounding muscles over her hindquarter, her the way that she was standing had improved, she had changed the way that she held herself, and her the way that her body was basically put together had changed and improved in a remarkable way. And what I found particularly interesting or fascinating to me about that scenario was, in a 21-day colt start where the horse has never been ridden before, I can tell you now that I am not working on self-carriage, I'm not working on collection, I'm not working on developing the horse's back or anything like that. What I'm working on is teaching the horse how to be ridden, teaching the horse how to be confident and happy and not buck their rider off or something like that, and teaching the horse to move forward freely in all the gaits. So with that in mind, and bearing in mind that my entire program is based on the relaxation and confidence of the horse, what that tells me and what that shows me, a horse that was ridden for probably only about 14 days, because the first week I spend developing all the ground exercises and things like that, a horse that had only been ridden for 14 days had developed in amazing areas in her body, which you would only generally expect to develop when you're working on collection and asking the horse to use those particular muscles. But because she was relaxed and moving freely and forward, she developed the muscles that she needed, and the muscles that I'm going to need later on in her ridden career when I am asking her for self-carriage and things like that. She had developed those muscles as a riding horse, quality muscle, all because all I had focused on was relaxation. So the horse was quite happy to move forward in that nice, long, flat gait that I really like, and a lot of you that have been to my courses, I always say that comes first. I'm not worried about the horse being an accordion and collecting himself and lifting his back and coming through from behind and all that cool stuff until the horse is able to go forward freely, without his head held high in the air because he's in stress. Just move forward and basically be flat across the top. And that's how I was able to develop, and I wasn't focused on it at all, but that's how that horse was able to develop those quality muscles. So not focusing on relaxation is a huge thing that is going to slow your progress, and it's going to interfere with the quality of muscle and strength that your horse is building, because any movement that's done with tension is going to be causing damage to your horse's body. And when a horse is not relaxed, they are tense in the mind. Tense in the mind means they're going to be tense in the body, not necessarily through the whole body, but definitely in areas through the body. Just like human beings, you know that if you're tense, if you've had a bad day or something, you might carry tension in your shoulders, you might carry it in your neck, places like that. Horses do exactly the same thing. So a tense mind is going to be reflected in the body. So you might be able to ask that horse to shorten his body and perform a particular maneuver, but if that maneuver is coming in with a tense mind and a tense body, then you're potentially tearing muscles and doing damage to muscles rather than promoting good blood flow and good movement in a relaxed state of mind. So always focus on relaxation first. Mental health before all else is my mantra. No matter what, for any horse, from a foundation horse all the way up to Olympic horses. The third thing that I wanted to touch base on that I see interfering with people's progress a lot, or slowing people's progress down a lot, is the horses being in their party clothes already, or being in tip-top show condition. I meet a lot of horses that are in really good, and I'm not talking about having horses that are skinny or weak or anything like that, but what I'm talking about is getting a horse off a trailer to come to a course, and the horse has behavioural issues, and the horse looks like it could go into a royal show tomorrow because it is so well fed and, looked after and all those sort of things. The owner's wanting the horse to look amazing, or maybe they're not even wanting the horse to look amazing, but they're feeding the horse as, products and all this sort of stuff. The horse looks $1 million, but because the horse hasn't gone through the training or doesn't have the relaxation of the mind, the horse develops behavioral issues because you're feeding the horse like an athlete, and he's not an athlete yet, so he doesn't know how to channel that energy. It's like giving kids red cordial. You can give a kid red cordial if you're about to take him out for the day and let him run in a park all day and run around and play with his friends and all that sort of stuff. Red cordial is just a hypothetical. I don't need a million messages about the sugar content and all the rest of it. Understood. But you can do that to a child and take him outside and quite happily go, well, he's going to run around, he's going to burn that energy and use that red cordial up. But there's no point in giving the kid red cordial and then saying, okay, now we're going to sit down and I'm going to read you a story, or I'm going to teach you something, or I'm going to expect you to listen to me and try and learn something. Because the kid's going to be all hyperactive because he's got all this energy and food in his body. And that's what we do to our horses. We feed them up, they've got all this energy and food in their body's saying, run, you can move, you've got all this energy, you should be using it. And then we say, whoa, I want to teach you how to do something like a hindquarter yield. And the horse goes, well, I don't have time to that. I've got to move my feet. Now, I've got no problem with feeding horses like they're athletes if they're athletes. It's like my performance horses. Everybody gets a different diet depending on whether they're on the road with me and depending on whether they can handle, so to speak, that diet and that spike in energy, and whether they're going to be able to manage their behavior and emotions and their body in a constructive way, or whether I've overfed them and they're going to come out and, be, an idiot on a string, I like to call it, a kite out in the middle of the arena that you can't communicate with. So, number 3, feeding the horse like an athlete before he's ready to be an athlete. Number 4 is, sometimes what I see is people focusing on the final picture instead of understanding how the horse gets there. So what I mean by that is, when we talked earlier in the show about getting task focused, we were talking about achieving a specific manual task, so to speak, or physical task with the horse, like getting him on the trailer or riding him or something like that. What I'm talking about here, when I'm talking about focusing on the final picture, is what I see a lot of people doing is looking at the end result. So they're looking at the final product of the horse that they're trying to build. So whether you're a camp drafter or a dressage rider or a reining horse rider or a western horse rider, or you ride cowboy dressage, or you do liberty, or you do shows, or you do trail rides, or you do whatever, picture the top of the line, top of the game horse that's doing that and what it looks like. So, a dressage horse is going to be in a particular frame. A camp drafting horse is going to be very responsive and able to be steered onto a beast, and so on and so forth. What I see people doing is focusing on that final picture and trying to get their horse to fit into that final picture before he's ready for it. So what I mean by that is, for example, camp drafting horses are very fast and they're very responsive. I can't walk out into my horse's training arena, jump on him, kick him in the guts and expect him to do jump into the gallop or the canter, because I haven't prepared him for that and I haven't laid the foundation work required to make my horse responsive in that way, while preserving his confidence and allowing him to be part of that team that I'm looking for, and that responsive element that I'm looking for. There's a path that gets you there. The other thing that I see people doing in regards to, say, a dressage horse or a horse that is in, say, beautiful self-carriage, I see people looking at that final picture and they look at that frame, we like to call it, or we look at the shape of the horse and we think, I need to get my horse's head down, or I need to do this with my horse, or I need to do that. And so we go out in the paddock and we try and focus on our horse putting his head down. And what we haven't understood is that the head down is quite often the final product of that entire journey. First, we need to build that from the back to the front. And so what happens is we start working on, say, the horse bringing his hindquarter through more, so he's able to get engagement, which is going to allow him to lift the back and come into self-carriage. And what's going to happen when the horse starts to come through from behind, we're going to be asking him to lift up through the front of his body. So it's the thoracic sling, if you want to get specific about it. So we want him to elevate or lift through that thoracic sling, and we want him to sit in the haunches. But if we're trying to pull his head down because we're looking at this final picture and we're saying, well, head down is what the final picture looks like, we don't understand that in order for the horse to be able to lift that sling and shift that weight back, he has to lift his head up and learn how to move his body with that balance. Our horse's head is one of the heaviest parts of his body. So what happens is, when we kind of insist that he keeps his head down and then we try and tell him to lift the front of his body, he struggles with that because he doesn't understand that he's able to lift through the shoulder like this and lift through the thoracic sling like this while he's coming through from behind, and that elongation happens over through the back. What happens with a young horse or a horse that we're educating or that hasn't experienced that before, what he does is say, oh, you want me to lift this part, I need to lift my head first. And we get all grumpy with that and say, I don't want you to lift your head, and we start trying to focus on putting his head down. So then he puts it back down, and what happens is the weight pulls it down. So there's a big difference between my horse having his head up in the air and being hollow in the back, and my horse simply having to carry his head in a higher position to allow him to elevate through the front and eventually develop the strength in his body to be able to round over the top and give me that self-carriage that I'm aiming for. So focusing on the final picture can really delay our progress, because we look at that final picture and cause our horse either biomechanical issues or stress, or mental stress by getting after them and expecting them to perform like a performance horse when we haven't spent the time building those responses and that sort of thing. So the last thing that I want to talk about is working within the limits of the horse. And what I mean by that is understanding where our horse is coming from in regards to his breed, in regards to his conformation, in regards to his temperament, and in regards to his education level. So I wouldn't sit here and say, you know, a Western horse is not able to do dressage maneuvers because that's not what he's bred for. In fact, my horse Cooper, slowly but surely over the years, he's able to use his body in a more functional way, and we're really starting to get some cool high level maneuvers out of that horse. But it's taken a very long time for him to be able to do that because he is a Western horse, so he's built and bred downhill. He's very downhill in front. And those of you who read my article, I can't remember when I sent it, it was a newsletter, I put 2 photos on that article, and one of them was a photo of Cooper, and one of them was a photo of my warm blood mare, Galliano. And Galliano, conformationally, she is so uphill in front. She's already sitting in the haunches just walking around the paddock. The front of her body, her thoracic sling is already lifted just naturally, and her head and neck come out of her body like this. Whereas Cooper is tipped downhill like this. He's built downhill. If you look at him side on, he's not lower in the wither, but almost so. And his whole thoracic sling is rolled forward and pointing at the ground. So obviously it's going to take him so much longer to be able to develop the strength and the muscles required to perform the maneuvers that I'm asking him to do, because that's not what he was bred for. He was bred to, you know, stand there and look pretty as a halter horse primarily. And Galliano was bred to do the high level maneuvers. So she's already in front because of her breeding and her conformation and the way that she's put together. Again, I'm not saying that Cooper is not going to be able to do those things, but I am saying that we need to acknowledge the horse's breed and conformation and set realistic time frames in regards to being able to do those maneuvers. You know, Galliano is probably going to be able to do those maneuvers, and she does them now in the paddock all on her own when she's showing off with her friends and running around and all that sort of stuff. You know, she does them all by herself anyway because she's just naturally conformed in that way. So her journey is going to be a lot faster than Cooper's, but Cooper's is a lot slower because of the way that he's put together. So number 5 is working within the limits of the horse. I'm not saying to limit your horse. I'm very anti-limiting anything, person or horse. I'm not into saying, hey, your horse, you know, isn't going to be able to do that, so let's just call it quits now. I think that we can build things over time, and I think we can achieve incredible things over time when we invest the time that we need to in order to help the horse and the way that he's put together. But we do need to look at our horse and assess it for the work that we're trying to do with it, and understand that different horses are bred specifically and have been bred specifically for years and years and years to do certain tasks. So, you know, taking a thoroughbred racehorse and expecting it to be a plod along kids pony, that's not what the horse was bred for. Can he do it? Yeah, eventually he's going to be able to do it. But initially, his conformation and his breeding is one of speed and, you know, covering a short track or a long track, depending on what sort of racehorse it is, over a short period of time. So that is my top 5 ways that riders self-sabotage, and I see a delay in the progress because of it. So I hope that you got something out of tonight's show. Please feel free to share it. Again, please feel free to send me your topics and anything that you would like to hear me talk about. My replays are always up on my Facebook page. They're also on the YouTube channel. If you want to head over to my YouTube channel, there's training videos on my YouTube channel as well, which aren't generally posted here on Facebook. And I look forward, I'm heading up to Bangalore tomorrow for a 2-day clinic, so I look forward to seeing you guys. We're doing a feel and timing course, and of course then we come back for the extreme trail this weekend, and then I've got a couple of weeks off, and then we've got the big 10-day retreat, which I'm really excited about, and the posters and all that should be coming out fairly soon with that one, but I already do have people booking in, so please let me know if you're interested in booking into the 10-day equine retreat. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all next Wednesday if I don't see you before.